Hey, welcome back to the Time Capsule Show, where we define life in the 21st century through our voices and our opinions because we're probably saying the things that everyone else is thinking. My name is Joenrhuz, and it's a beautiful day here in New York. Today, we're filming, and hopefully it doesn't rain later on. But today, we have a special guest on our show. We have Kelly Wong. She's an educator, research scientist, and is a proud advocate for women in STEM. Welcome to the show, Kelly, and feel free to introduce yourself.
Okay, hey, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me as well. I'm so super excited. But yes, my name is Kelly. I am a first year master's student at Queens College. I just finished my first semester. Yes, I'm a science educator with the New York Hall of Science, as well as the Intrepid Air and Space Museum. Yeah, I'm here in Manhattan, in New York City as well. I am also a New York City native. I live in New York City as well. And yes, I'm also a research scientist as well. I have been involved in research for about 6 years now, ever since I was an undergraduate at Pace University, which is where I got my undergraduate degree in biology, and I'm carrying it on for my master's. I am also a master's in biology as well.
Awesome. Major respect to you. I have major respect for scientists. One of my cousins is actually a scientist. She's like getting her doctorate in immunobiology. And I'm just like, when I think of science, like it doesn't really register in my mind anymore, especially after high school. I took some chemistry classes in college actually, but for you, when did your like passion for science start? When did you know that this is the route that I want to take?
So I actually got involved in biology and science kind of like by mistake, actually.
Mistake.
Yeah, well, I mean, now it's not a mistake, but at the time I thought it was. So I would say maybe it was like my junior year of high school, I think. I was actually an engineering major, actually. So I was in the engineering department in my high school. I was not involved in science or research quite yet. So it was at the end of my senior year of high school where I realized that engineering was probably not for me. It was so much math. It was just so much, much just like figuring. I just couldn't stand it like when it was talking about like forces and just how two different, like for an example, like two different beams were pushing up against each other. I could not figure out where the force was going. I couldn't tell whether it was going outwards or inwards or towards each other. I just couldn't figure it out. It was just not clicking. So that was when I decided I needed to switch majors or like do something else. So that's where I got involved in science because I knew it was something that I personally loved and I thought that I could make a career out of it. So when I got accepted into colleges, I got accepted into this biology program in Pace University. And Pace University is more known for business, not so much biology, because their biology department is pretty small compared to most biology departments that I also applied for. But I think that was to my benefit as well, since it was so small, all the professors knew each other there and knew all of their students, which I think was a benefit for me because I was able to build better connections through that. So that was when I got involved in biology. So I started with just basic biology classes just to see if I would like it, and I truly loved it. And then that's how I got my start into research. My very, very first research ever outside of academics was at Mount Sinai Hospital when I
Nice.
researched Alzheimer's disease, which was really, really cool. And then that's just where my science research career just kind of like took off. Um,
Nice. So when it comes to your career, like where do you see yourself going with your research, with this path that you're pursuing in science?
mhm. Yeah, of course. So, with the path that I'm going, I might go into a PhD, but I'm still not positive on that because I know PhD is a huge commitment, but we'll see on that. But in further, like, I just for like job and career wise, I may go into like my plan currently is to like be like a research coordinator or like a research assistant, and then hopefully that leads to being like senior research coordinator or I could also adjunct. I'm also, like I said, I'm an adjunct professor
Right.
as well. I think I'll get into that a little bit later. But I can also go into the route of academia, and or I could also be a museum educator as well, because I also have a background in museum education. So I have like a lot of different skills and I have a lot of different backgrounds that could lead me to different routes. Because I did experiment a lot when it comes to STEM and education,
Hmm.
passion, because I knew those were both a passion that I had and I still have up to today. Hey, so with all of those different backgrounds, it could lead me to different in paths. So I'm just seeing right now which one is the best for me. Hey, but I definitely hope to be able to continue research as well, like in the future. Sure, but as well as be involved in academia as well, whether it's formal or informal.
Got it. So it seems like you have many routes that you can take this, and I love the passion. I can feel it, how passionate you are with this road that you're going. So I know that we were talking about, before this interview, we were talking about women in STEM, and I was looking into, data and statistics about that. And it's pretty jarring to see the differences that we see, especially when we see how many men, comparing men and women that are in STEM. So I wanted to ask you, like, what are your takes on that? What struggles did you face, if any, when you're going towards this road?
Mhm. Of course, yeah. So like my take definitely like in especially like Asian women in STEM, I know there's been like so much hate towards Asians. I'm sure you've people have seen like in the news,
Hmm.
which honestly is very jarring as well. So I definitely think that just like I said, being an Asian woman in STEM is definitely very, very important, especially in this time of this during this time when number one, STEM has been taking off a lot because like there's definitely a younger generation getting involved in coding and then computer science and as well as just like different STEM fields. And then when it comes to, like I said, being an Asian women in STEM, as definitely as like a STEM educator, I've been involved, like I said, been involved in STEM education for years. It's definitely I would say definitely a reward to be able to be like an Asian woman, and as well as the path that I am on, because I've never thought that I would be like on the path that I am on right now when it comes to being like both a researcher and as well as a science educator.
Hmm.
So challenges that I have personally faced, was definitely when it was actually, this was just more recent actually. So one challenge that I faced was I just finished a research project with a lab based out in Washington State. The lab is called Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. It's under the US Department of Energy. And I was doing this research project online. So it's a 3 hour time difference. So if it was like 12 o'clock p.m. over here, it would be like 9 o'clock in the morning over there in Washington State. So that was definitely a challenge because whenever I would need something from like my principal investigators, I would have to wait until later in the day to ask
Mm.
them for help because they would not be up around the time that I would be up. So that just led to just a ton of late nights. I just doing research, but I think that was the most rewarding part as well because I was able to get the project out, and I was researching snake venom proteins.
Wow.
So yeah.
So wait, tell me about this. So what were you doing with the stink that proteins?
So this was a database research. So it was not like on the bench wet lab research, it was database.
Okay.
So I was looking at all of these different snake peptides, which peptides are the building blocks of
Of
protein. So peptides make up
right.
proteins.
I remember that from high school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure, at least I'm happy that you heard that. So they gave me like billions and billions of snake peptides. And then my challenge was to organize all of those peptides and filter out the human peptides and the snake peptides, and then see how many snake peptides were detected. And all of this was a blood sample that was taken from a person I think I'm just gonna I have to re-say this part. Because it's a little bit complex. So so this so the I was basing my research off a already published article since I couldn't go out there and do this myself. The scientist who originally published this research paper, gave me and my principal investigator access to all of these snake egg peptides through a database. And then I downloaded all of it, and all these peptides were from a blood sample that was taken from a victim that was bitten by a venomous snake and
Wow.
passed away. So the challenge was to see if it was actually snake venom that killed this victim. And it was so that's where my research was. It was just to prove that it was snake venom that killed this victim.
Wow, that's so fascinating. And it's like you're kind of like an investigator to see like, that's the problem. And you have to like see if, like you said, to see if the snake venom is the one that killed the victim.
Yeah, so that was definitely one challenge. And then another challenge that I did end up facing as well, like on my path to where I am today.
Hmm.
I was also I'm also an adjunct professor as well. So that was like my formal education. That was like my formal education experience because, like I said, I have formal and informal education, which I'll get into informal education in just a little bit. But my formal education is, yes, I am an adjunct professor. I'm an adjunct professor at Queens College, which is where I do my master's. And I also teach biology. So I teach like the basic biology class. I teach the lab portion of it. And it was very eye-opening, to say the least, of being a professor and seeing the behind the scenes of what it's like to prep labs, grades, and then prepare lectures. That was definitely an eye-opening experience, but that was also a challenge because I've never done anything like that before. And then that combined with the research in Washington that I was doing based out of Washington State just added more challenges onto my plate.
Right.
A but it was also a really good learning experience as well to help to manage my time I'm better and just to see what works and what didn't work.
Right.
So how I would do it though is which was another this is included in the challenges portion that we are talking about. So I would be teaching really early in the morning, so it was like a 9 to 12 o'clock
Hmm.
class that I would be teaching. So that way in the afternoon, when my sorry, not private, principal investigators were awake, I could do my Washington State research in the afternoon.
Mm.
And then while that was happening, I could also during the daytime would prep like stuff for my following class. Because the class was my adjunct professor responsibilities was once a week that I would have to teach, but then like I said, I would also have to upload all the grades online. So all of that combined, it just gave me empathy for those professors who all have to do research as well as prep lectures and assignments and labs for their students. So it just gave me
Hmm.
empathy, which was a huge eye opener for those college professors. Because I definitely know college students who like just talk down on their professors, saying
Yeah.
how yeah yeah like this professor like uploaded grades super late, and then
Hmm.
got feedback on my assignment super late, and then
Right.
I am just here thinking, you have no idea
Right.
what
But
goes on
you're
behind the
right.
scenes.
You're in their shoes now. So you see exactly like, how many things they're juggling. Like you're working on, many things while you were doing this. So, that's great that you're able to see from their point of view when it came to that. But when it comes to like to people who want to pursue this path, or if you could talk to yourself, from many years ago, what advice would you have given yourself? What advice would you give, a little girl, a little boy who wants to pursue what you're doing?
Mhm. Okay, yeah. I would probably tell them don't give up. Because there were plenty of times that I wanted to give up on my path because it was just so many things like if I told like my childhood, I was super shy. And
Hmm.
I did not enjoy talking, or like if you asked me, hey, can you go up to the board and just talk about like your homework assignment? I would not do it because I was just so shy. I but now that I'm doing what I am doing, meaning that I could easily just go up into a audience and just talk about whatever I want.
Really?
I,
So
yeah,
what do you feel then? I know you said that you were shy when you were growing up, but what's like the differences now? Like what gave you that confidence to be able to just speak to anyone?
Mhm. What gave me the confidence? I would definitely say that was my when I started informal education at like the so I started informal education. So informal education versus formal education is like classroom education, like teaching a whole class and then grading everything. That's formal. Informal education is more focused on museums, and then it's still similar to like in a classroom, but you're not grading anyone. So I that definitely so I started my informal education experience at the Museum of Natural History, and I think that's what ultimately broke me out of my shyness shell that I was in. I was shy I from like at a very young age until maybe I was like 15 years old. Oh, and then
Hmm.
I got my very first internship at the Museum of Natural History, and
Wow.
that's at the age of 16. So, and I was still pretty shy at the time, but they helped me to break out of my shyness shell and just kind of coached me into talking and then not being shy about it, because when you're shy and you're not confident in what you're saying, this was the advice they gave me. If you're shy and you're not confident in what you're saying, no one's gonna believe you.
Mhm.
So they told me we're gonna take this day by day, and we're gonna coach you on how to speak to people, how to speak to visitors, because we were talking to visitors literally every single day, since the Museum of Natural History is like a tourist location. They get millions of visitors like a week at least.
Great.
So they coached me into talking and how to feel comfortable about it, and they made sure I had all the resources that I needed. So it was like a fact sheet, and then they just told me, okay, you don't have to memorize this word for word, but just get the general concept idea. Start off with the general concept idea, and then work your way into more of the specific facts to help you gain more confidence. And it took about 2 weeks of speech, I guess speech training or like coaching thing to like talking to the general public. And I think that's what ultimately broke me out of my shyness shell, and it helped me go from so it was I start like I said, started off with music natural history, then eventually into the New York Hall of Science, which is where I continue my informal education in experience up to today. I'm still there working as a science educator, and then which eventually led me to being an adjunct professor,
Hmm.
just in terms of like my education route. And as
Right.
well as I'm an educator with the Intrepid Air and Space Museum as well.
Wow. You've got a lot of experience on your resume.
Yeah. And then so yeah, that's just where but I will thank Museum of Natural History for helping me break out of my shyness
Mhm.
shell, which ultimately I think breaking out of my shyness shell, which eventually leads back to like the previous question you asked me, like what kind of advice I would give like my younger self or like a young child. when it comes to doing science or research, just go for it. Right? If you worst that could happen is a no. Oh, and then I have gotten a few no's in the past, as when it comes to both science, research, and education. But that's okay. It just shows that okay, this position is not right for but there will be other opportunities for someone else to say yes. Just don't give up. So
I
yeah,
love that.
that's how it started out
Mhm.
with education, which ultimately led to research just like in the middle of my education journey because I'm still a bio major. I was still a bio major and still am a bio major. So I still needed that research experience in undergraduate for like my thesis and as well as some research classes. And that's how dipped my I dipped my foot into the whole research
Right.
realm, which ultimately led to me researching for the U.S. Department of Energy. Yeah, so that was basically my experience with Washington State. That Pacific Northwest National Lab is under the U.S. Department of Energy. And I also have done research for Brookhaven National Laboratory. I did that last summer during the pandemic,
Hmm.
because everything was on lockdown
Right.
during that time because it was before vaccinations could happen. Everything had to be online. So I was
Right.
lucky enough to be able to do database research. I know so many people who don't get that exposure or that experience when it comes to database research because you do need to know Python coding language,
Wow.
which which I'm happy that all those resources are becoming more available now
Right.
compared to pre-pandemic, which I did not see Python or Java or anything like that really taking off in the science research field. But now I think that since we were shut down for a little bit in terms of like wet lab research, there was not a lot of wet lab research
Got
going
it.
on when you go into like an actual lab with like a bench. So I think that's where database research, Python and all that really took off.
Right. So you have so much experience, and I'm so proud of you, especially with the U.S. Department of Energy and all like these projects that you're working on. First of all, congratulations on all of that. And when you were talking about never giving up and the worst you can get is a no, that reminded me of a quote that I saw recently, and it was, it's not rejection, it's redirection, right? And there may be a no, but maybe that's a sign for you that maybe it wasn't the best option for you, and maybe it's leading you towards a better path for yourself. So that's what kind of just clicked in my head when you said that. But now I know our episode is coming to an end soon. But I have to ask you the question that we ask every guest that we have on our show. And it's a question that's really synonymous with our title, Time Capsule Show. So if you were to put something in a time capsule for people to dig up 100 years later, what would you put in there and why?
I would probably I would say a beaker, like a chemistry beaker,
Mm,
or with like the measurements of like millimeters,
right.
yeah, milliliters in it because I do know that science research is going to continue evolving over the years, and it's just never going to stop evolving. So I would love to. So the reason why I would put a science speaker in a time capsule is to show the future or what kind of equipment science researchers used in the past, as because I definitely know in the future equipment's gonna be evolving. How people do research is going to be evolving, and it's just not science research is just never going to stop.
Hmm.
Uh, so, and I always look forward, and I do look forward to seeing what is in the future for scientists and science researchers.
Definitely agree with you. And something I was talking about with my brother the other day about like he just research and science never stopping. He was talking about time travel, and I'm like, that's impossible. And he's saying you never know where science will bring us. You never know what other planets we'll be discovering. I saw this one YouTube video about like how small the Earth is compared to the whole universe. And for me, like that's what the amazing part about science. It's all logical, it's all analytical, and like there's just no stopping to what you can discover and find. What's your socials in case any of our listeners, our viewers want to keep up with you, follow you?
Okay, yeah. So of course, so I do have Instagram. It's at KELLWO 548. I'm sure is it gonna be linked in the description?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can follow me on Instagram. And I don't have Twitter or like, and I don't use Facebook, but Instagram would probably be the best place to reach me. I'm always reading my DMs, and I recently gave a talk as well at the Intrepid Air and Space Museum a couple weeks ago. And I've also have gotten messages asking me more questions about my science background through Instagram. So definitely Instagram would be the best place to reach me.
Awesome. And I love doing that. I love making a whole network of people. I know people will be inspired by your story and hopefully they'll resonate with you and the path that you've gone. Well, thank you so much for tuning in today, everyone. Thank you so much for being on our show, Kelly. Make sure to tune in every Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern and make sure to follow us on our socials at TC Show 21. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.